This is college football week 7 on the Rookie Big Board. I'm your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, joined as always by my co-host, John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar, back at it for a jam-packed week 7. We have our marvelous matchup segment, as always, our best bets, our prize picks of the week, and of course, our Fantastic Four sleepers. Let's waste no time jumping into our marvelous matchups of the week. This segment, if you are new to the show, welcome. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment on YouTube, subscribe on your favorite podcast provider. This is where we go through our top college fantasy football matchups based on the Vegas lines for highest over-unders with reasonable spread totals, starting here with Arizona at Washington. Yes, Arizona at Washington is the highest over-under of the week at 73, with Vegas expecting Washington to come through with a lot of points here. They are 14-point favorites. John, certainly on the Arizona side of the ball, it's Jayden de Laura, it's Jacob Cowing. On the Washington side of the ball, it is Michael Penix, it is Jalen McMillan, who is our cover player this week, but there's so much more to watch in this game. Who have you identified, John?
Man, I'm just excited that the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are back for fantasy purposes. They have some great offenses. This Arizona team, Jayden de Laura is still widely available. If you need a quarterback, I believe there are only 104 teams playing out of the 130 this week, and there's been a ton of injuries, Matt. So if you need a quarterback on the waiver wire, Jayden de Laura is a great option, because in garbage time, if Vegas is right, they're playing from behind, de Laura might throw the ball 50 times in this game. So I like him here. Don't go to the Arizona backfield. I know I had Wiley as a sleeper 2 weeks ago, and he scored like 26 points. He came through with 2 receiving touchdowns, but it looks like Jonah Coleman is going to start. I don't like it. It's a messy backfield. I'm not going to go there. You just mentioned Cowing. Last week, I liked Dorian Singer. He kind of bit me, but you know what? He's been too good overall all year. I expect to bounce back. If you're looking for a wide receiver in flex, Dorian Singer can do very well for you. On the Washington side, Michael Penix, he's a must start now. He's just playing too well. They're at home. Highest over-under on the board, Matt. If you got him, you have to start him in my book. You just talked about Jalen McMillan. The other receiver, Rome Odunze, is playing great football. He's probably owned on a higher percentage. So, like, when I do my sleepers, I look for under 50%. So I know he's over that 50. But if he's on your bench or if he's available, go get him in this game. And I really don't like the backfield again. These two teams might put the ball in the air, Matt, 90 to 100 times. Stay with the pass catchers and the quarterbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to see it. Oklahoma State at TCU, a battle of two undefeated teams. TCU's coming off of that charged victory against Kansas. The over-under here is 68.5, and TCU is a 4-point favorite. TCU led by Max Duggan, who I think we can finally trust. It took me a while to get to that point. Kendre Miller is tearing it up on the ground. And apparently, John, Quentin Johnston has decided that he wants to contribute to the fantasy football world again, because after we have proclaimed him as fantasy irrelevant, he comes out last week, 14 receptions, more than his total for the season through the first 4 games previous, 206 yards, almost double more than his first 4 games previous, and he finds his first touchdown of the season. So it'll be interesting to see what Quentin Johnston we get. I'll let you get into that. But on the other side of the ball, it's quarterback Spencer Sanders, who has been very consistent, very productive, protecting the ball unlike the past few years. Dominic Richardson, steady, not super exciting, but we did see the return of Braden Johnson at the wide receiver position. What else are we looking for here between the Cowboys and the Horned Frogs?
First, I got to say, I think in DFS lineups, this game is going to be stacked by DFS players, and I'm not against having both quarterbacks in your lineup this week. Spencer Sanders is the number 10 quarterback, depending on scoring system, obviously. But in our Kings Classic, Spencer Sanders is the number 10 quarterback overall. And Max Duggan, who didn't even start the season really, he's the number 21 quarterback in fantasy football. So go ahead with both of those quarterbacks. They are must starts in this game. Oklahoma State's wide receivers have been frustrated. I was in on Jaden Bray, Matt. He has not lived up to expectations, but he was injured. Last week, he only had 2 receptions, but here's where research matters. He had 10 targets, Matt. So I'll take 10 targets and hope that, right, the law of averages work themselves out eventually. So if Jaden Bray has been cut in your league and he's available, he is an interesting player this week. Braden Johnson, Brennan Presley, they have 3 good receivers. Not one of them has really jumped to the forefront. Dominic Richardson, if you don't get a touchdown, Matt, he's not efficient whatsoever. Not sure if I'm going to play him unless I'm desperate. And I will take credit for the entire college fantasy football universe. I buried Quentin Johnson last week. I said he was done. I cut him on a team. I was done. And Matt, he went out and proved me wrong. What we all thought was the possibility. I really don't know what happened, but watching the game, it appeared that they manufactured plays for him. They also put him in the slot, and I think they gave him 2-way goes because there were a lot of passes that he caught where he was running down the middle in the slot, and I think he had the option of go in or out based on the coverage, the safety. They gave him the ball, and that had not happened all season long. He looked great. I still feel really good about Darius Davis. He's been a big play guy if you're looking for another Horned Frog wide receiver. And Kendre Miller, Matt, I have him in the must-start category right now. He is too good. The offense is too efficient. He's having a great season. You have a 15-point floor with the 25-point ceiling every week. I love him at running back.
Another week, another marvelous matchups mentioned for North Texas. We have Louisiana Tech at North Texas. The over-under here is 68. North Texas is laying 6.5 points, so they're 6.5-point favorites. We kind of know the rundown for North Texas for the Mean Green at this point. It's Austin Oon at quarterback. There's a little bit of rotation there at running back, which makes it less appealing, and the ball gets spread all around, but Shorter ends up with the most touchdowns. Roderick Burns ends up with the most receptions. On the Louisiana Tech side of the game here, it's Marquise Crosby, the main running back here. Some level of production, not super exciting, although he is efficient. John, the wide receivers, though, the pass catchers are what intrigued me from this. Griffin Herbert, the tight end, is leading the team in or second in the team in receptions with 403 yards and 3 touchdowns. But Smoke Harris has made headlines this year, 4 touchdowns, leading the way for Louisiana Tech. But Trey Harris is actually leading the team in receptions with 25. So a few different options here if you're looking on the Louisiana Tech side of the ball.
Matt, I agree. We know the North Texas, the Mean Green, who they're going to throw out there. We've talked about a lot about them all year, mostly because they have such a good offense. Made me look deeper at Louisiana Tech. If you haven't been paying attention, they have a quarterback, Parker McNeil. And one of my friends on Twitter, who's a big college fantasy football fan, he keeps talking to me about Parker McNeil. And Matt, he's pretty good. He's one of those interesting players. I haven't put him in the waiver wire gemstones. I didn't identify him as 100% sleeper this week, but he's a very fascinating quarterback. So let's watch him. I'm very interested in this game. Griffin Herbert, the tight end, Matt, he's a must start. He's a top 12 fantasy tight end. I have him in 2 leagues. He's been great this year. And you mentioned Trey Harris. I just broke down my analysis for my Friday column. Trey Harris is in it. Listen to these stats by North Texas. They are surrendering 267 yards per game and have given up 12 touchdowns this year. Louisiana Tech is an underdog here. I love the great game script. I'll take that any day. And Trey Harris is available in 94% of his leagues Go get him, everyone.
James Madison at Georgia Southern. Oh, I'm sorry, John. A quick correction here. Your nationally ranked 25th ranked James Madison Dukes at Georgia Southern. Over under here is 67, and JMU is a 12-point favorite, undefeated in their first season at the FBS level. Super fantastic. A big reason behind that is Todd Centeio. Our cover image, John, for week 2, I think, week 3.
Yeah.
And he has paid off a dual threat, 15-1 touchdown interception ratio. He's rushed the ball 48 times. He's found the end zone twice on the ground. I think the big story for fantasy football, though, is the impact of Chris Thornton absolutely dominating the wide receiver room. 32 receptions through 5 games, 516 yards, 5 touchdowns. On the Georgia Southern side of the ball, this is a team that we've talked about before. Kyle Van Treese, less consistent quarterback play on the Georgia Southern side of the ball. A rotation in the running back room, but Jalen White pulling away and certainly leading the way with 8 touchdowns through the first 5 games. And then, John, 3 receivers with over 30 receptions thus far this season. Derwin Burgess, Caleb Hood, Jeremy Singleton. It's hard for all of those guys to not be in play to some degree this week as buys continue adding up on us.
Matt, we love both passing games, but this is a game where the 2 running backs, there's tremendous value here. You mentioned Jalen White of Georgia Southern. Matt, the Eagles running back has been terrific this year. I think he's owned in a very high percentage, but if there's a chance that he's available on your waiver wire, go get Jalen White. I like him a lot. The other side of the ball, though, Matt, Percy, a guy obese. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, and I apologize. But this young man is a graduate student. He's 6'0", 213 pounds. Matt, I love these older running backs who've been in the system. He's been at James Madison for a very long time. He's a big and powerful back. He's a great complement to this passing game. He's actually scored over 20 points in 2 of the last 3 weeks. He's available on 86% of leagues. Man, he's a no-brainer for a flex position starter. Percy, a guy obese, the Duke's running back is definitely worth it. And you mentioned Kyle Van Treese. In my opinion, if you have minus points for interceptions, it's very hard to start Van Treese. If you don't have negative points for interceptions and you're just getting yards and touchdowns, Van Treese is worth the long shot start. Even last week, he had 3 touchdowns, but he threw 4 interceptions, and he had a ton of yards. We know Georgia Southern, the Eagles are going to throw the ball all over. You could get them, but it depends on your scoring system, Matt.
A great basketball matchup here, staying in the Southeast. It's the North Carolina Tar Heels at the Duke Blue Devils. The Tar Heels will be rocking their chrome helmets featuring the Tar Heel logo itself, which is fun. They are 7-point favorites with an over-under here of 67. Duke features Jalen Coleman at running back. They feature Riley Leonard at quarterback, the dual threat quarterback who we've talked. Leonard is certainly in play. Even though UNC's defense looked better last week, they're still giving up a ton of yards per game. I believe it was over 400 last week, despite allowing 24 points, if I'm remembering correctly here. Wide receiver Jalen Calhoun is in play. Jordan Moore is in play. And on the North Carolina side of things, Drake May has been lighting it up, 21 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He is an auto play. Omarion Hampton, the running back, seems to have pulled away with that room a decent bit. He got 15 carries last week. I still think it's pretty hard to trust Hampton on a week-in, week-out basis. But again, we're in the situation now where we might have to just lean into the flex a little bit. And when it comes to the receiving options, John, you may be able to identify somebody that's safe to play this week, but I struggle to.
Yeah, the North Carolina, other than Drake May, it's a conundrum because they are spreading the ball around, which is great for the team. The Tar Heels are putting points up on the board. just from a fantasy perspective, we like those funnel offenses, right? One stud running back, one stud wide receiver, maybe a second good wide receiver. But last week, J.J. Jones, 2 for 80. Josh Downs, 6 for 69. Antonio Green, 2 for 63. Caleb Hood, 5 for 50. And then you have Brian Nesbitt, the tight end. So it's really hard other than Downs. I think Downs is a must start, Matt. But the other ones, it can be tough to choose which one you want to put in your lineup, because if you don't get a touchdown, you could get in trouble from a fantasy perspective. Last week, Hood and Hampton, they were both good. Hood had the receptions, but Hampton scored the touchdown. I think if you're desperate at a flex, either player can do well. Petaway didn't have any touches last week. I think he was injured. He didn't get in the game, so a little concern there. Drake May is just the stud. He's the guy you want completely in this game. Now, Duke, Matt, you mentioned it. I've been searching this Duke roster, looking through the stats. Their offense is not fantasy friendly. Riley Leonard, I think, is the only player you can go with. And he's so up and down. I liked him last week. He didn't have a good game, but he does have upside to him. But I don't like the receivers. I don't like the running back. So it's a tough offense to get involved with. So this is a tough game, but there are players on the waiver wire for you.
Here we go. Alabama at Tennessee. Game day is back in Knoxville this week. It is sure to be a charged environment, to say the absolute least. Over under 65.5. Alabama is a 7-point favorite on the road, taking on the undefeated Vols. This will be an interesting game, John. I think at this point, it's reasonable to proceed with the idea that Bryce Young will be playing. That seems to be the expectation here, which means the wide receivers are in play, certainly for Alabama. Tennessee has a weakness in the secondary, and that means that Alabama's going to have some big plays. They're going to take it over the top. And remember, Tennessee is always looking to push the tempo. And last year when Tennessee, in the first year of the Josh Heupel offense, looked to push the tempo against Alabama, Nick Saban matched that tempo. He went for it, and Alabama actually had a higher time of possession than Tennessee last year. I believe it may have been the only time that the Vols had an opponent with a higher time of possession last year. So that being said, I do think running back is also in play. And in particular, I think you can play Jace McClellan this week. Now, certainly Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the guy, but if Bryce Young is out there and if he's playing at 75% and not 100%, and I don't know that he will be, but you have to think he's not going to be playing at full capacity. You would think that the running back should be in play, specifically running in between the tackles, which is where Alabama's going to want to attack Tennessee on the ground. So I think there's an opportunity for Jace McClellan to be fantasy relevant this week. I don't think he's necessarily going to outscore Jahmyr Gibbs, but there's room to go around. On the Tennessee side of the ball, Jabari Small, the running back, I think is in play. And obviously you don't get excited about playing a running back against Alabama, but he's in play based on volume. Against Florida, 19 carries. Against LSU, 22 carries. It is the Jabari Small show. He appears to be healthy, and he's productive when healthy. Over 200 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns over the last 2 games. And with Cedric Tillman out, which he is expected to be ruled out again this week, it's been the Brew McCoy show at wide receiver. 12 receptions for 242 yards over the last 2 weeks. He's proven to be the top target, but Jalen Hyatt is also very involved. If the Alabama secondary shuts down Brew McCoy, then it's going to be Jalen Hyatt underneath that Hendon Hooker's relying on. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in this game. John, what else are you identifying?
Hendon Hooker's a must start. From what I hear now, it looks like Cedric Tillman is out. Early reports are now reporting that he is definitely out. That makes Hyatt and Brew McCoy 100% must starts. Put him in your lineup. I would play Jabari Small also. This is a big game. Tennessee's at home. I know you can be worried about this Alabama defense. I know this might be sacrilegious, but Alabama's not as good as they've been, in my opinion, on the defensive side. I think you can score against them. Small's going to get touches, so I like him in this game. I was looking at Alabama. Milroe played last week at quarterback. He only had 12 receptions. The reason I bring that up is it doesn't help us unlock this Alabama receiving core. Burton, Brooks, and Gibbs had 3, 2, and 3 receptions. Gibbs is a must start. I like your idea with Jace McClellan. I think there's a chance. I do think Alabama's going to want to keep the ball. You don't want Tennessee to get those quick strikes and to just, put up quick points. Keep Tennessee's offense on the sideline. How do you do that? You run the ball with or without Bryce Young. I have a feeling Alabama's going to run the ball about 35 times if the game is close, if not 40. I like Alabama running in this game, so I think it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see this game, Matt.
All right, here we go. Fantastic Four sleepers. Our Fantastic Four segment, where we each identify a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and flex play of the week who is a viable starter, but maybe not at the top of your mind. Maybe they're still on the waiver wire, but certainly, as John mentioned, only 104 teams in play this week. Injuries piling up. I know certainly I'm already getting a little anxious about some of my lineups. I imagine you are too. John, start us off here with your quarterback, Cooper Legis from Utah State.
Matt, I spent 2 hours today making sure I had complete lineups because after waiver wires, and I have a team with like 7 players on bye, but I got a full lineup. I got my 9 starters, knock on wood. Let's see how they're going to do. But one of the players I like is Cooper Legis. In general, you might look at this game against Colorado State and say, you know what? It's not an amazing matchup. But I like Legis because he's a dual threat quarterback, Matt. In the last 2 games since he took over the starting job for the Aggies, he has 403 yards passing and 128 yards rushing and 6 total touchdowns. Even though it's only a 46-point over-under, I like Legis because he is the Aggies offense. He's a great player to put in your lineup if you need a quarterback here. At running back, it's hard, Matt. We have a lot of smart CFF fans. If you look at most waiver wires, the running back position is picked apart, but I have found a couple good ones. One of them is Mike Washington. He's kind of in a timeshare with Ron Cook. Basic carries. Cook has 85, Washington is 83. But when you look at the fantasy production, Washington is superior by far in the last 3 games. 22, 14, and 28 fantasy points. Why do I like this even more? They're playing the Minutemen of UMass. The raw stats of UMass are not as bad as they've been for the last 5 years. They're like middle of the pack against the run, but they haven't played a lot of good teams. I still believe that they can be run on. Maybe they're not going to get trampled for 350 like they were last year. However, Washington's going to get his touches here. I like the Bulls to run all over them. Hey, we spoke about Trey Harris. I don't need to go into it anymore. I really like him this week. I think it's a great matchup for the Bulldogs. If you need a wide receiver, get Trey Harris of Louisiana Tech. And at tight end, one of my favorite players. I'm not sure why no one's talking about him, Matt. I like Audric Estime. Maybe it's because everyone thought it'd be Chris Tyree. Notre Dame started out 0-2. Maybe fans wrote off the Fighting Irish. I'm not sure. But if you look at Estime, he's big, he's powerful, he's between the tackles. When he gets in the end zone, he's going to get you 20 points because even last week, I think he ended up with 13 points. He just didn't get in the end zone. I like him against Stanford at home. Audric Estime is a nice flex running back.
All right, here we go. Plug your nose. You're not going to like to hear it, But my quarterback this week is Graham Mertz. I know, I didn't think I'd be saying it either, but Graham Mertz against Northwestern. Remember, it's Jim Leonard in charge now. It's a different, I don't want to say it's a different offense. It's not like he's come in and overhauled the scheme, but there's a different man at the helm. And at least in week 6, it appeared to be useful for Graham Mertz. 20 of 29 for 299 yards, 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. 5 touchdowns is the same number of touchdowns that Mertz had the previous 3 games combined. This week, the Badgers are taking on Michigan State. They're 115th in the country in passing defense. And over the last 3 games specifically, they've allowed 319 passing yards per game. Graham Mertz doesn't feel good, but he's absolutely playable this week. He could end up as a top 12 fantasy football quarterback. Devin Neal, running back for Kansas, saw a season-high 15 carries against TCU. Remember, Jalen Daniels exited that game early. He went 15 for 88 in week 6. The week before, 14 for 75 in week 5. They're playing Oklahoma this week. Oklahoma is allowing 310 rushing yards per game over the last 3 games. You have to think with Jason Bean at the helm, they're not the quarterback that was not starting as QB1 at the beginning of the season. They're going to want to lean on their running game a little bit. I believe Oklahoma may have Dylan Gabriel back, which means that Kansas is going to want to try to slow down the game. I think Devin Neal gets close to 20 touches this week, and if he could find the end zone, he's going to be a big impact player. Now, let's head on over to Western Kentucky's wide receiver room. I know what you're thinking. Maybe I'm going to talk about David Davis. We've talked about David Davis on the past. Maybe I'm going to talk about Malachi Corley. We've talked about Corley in the past. No, because there's another option, and it's Michael Matheson. It's the one nobody is talking about, but he's getting targets too. Now, last week, he was just 3 for 24, but he did find it the end zone. The previous 3 weeks, he had 22 combined receptions. He has touchdowns in each of his last 2 games. This week, the Hilltoppers are playing Middle Tennessee, who is the fourth worst team in the country in passing yards allowed, 336 passing yards allowed per game. And actually, John, this is a rare instance where Middle Tennessee plays worse at home. They're 36 passing yards per game, but they're averaging 423 passing yards per game at home. And Middle Tennessee is playing at home this week. And in the flex position, I slid in another wide receiver. It's Isaiah Winstead from Eastern Carolina. He's 9 for 90 in week 6. He had 9 receptions for 90 yards against Tulane. He was 11 for 143 and a touchdown in week 4 against Navy. He has at least 5 receptions in every game, 6 receptions in all but 1, touchdowns in 2 of the last 3 weeks. And this week, the Pirates play Memphis, who are allowing 327 passing yards per game to opposing teams over the last 3 weeks. Memphis is trending down. Eastern Carolina, specifically Isaiah Winstead's passing attack, is trending up. And those are my 4 sleepers for this week. But we have another fantastic 4 segment. As always, John is going to give you 4 players that can serve as the foundation if you were playing in a salary cap type DFS lineup this week. And John, you are on mute. It was bound to happen.
Sorry about it. It was bound to happen. I'm usually pretty good. Sorry, everyone. So it is an awesome slate for DFS this week. And I couldn't believe it, Matt. Curtis Rourke, one of the hottest quarterbacks in all of fantasy football. He's only 6,200. He's a dual threat quarterback. He's been throwing the ball all over the yard. Ohio hosts Western Michigan. He's only 6,200, and this allows you to choose up for another big-time quarterback in which we have discussed all day here. Love Curtis Rourke for your salary savings, the Miami, Ohio quarterback. I mentioned it earlier when we broke down the Oklahoma State TCU game. Kendre Miller, his salary isn't going up as much as I would think. In the last 3 games, Matt, 17, 30, DraftKings points for Kendre Miller. Right now, we mentioned it. It's an over-under of 68.5. There's no way I'm not going to play a running back with that over-under. He's only 6,200, Kendre Miller. I'm going to pair him with Raheem Sanders of Arkansas. And I'm hoping that he's coming off a week where he wasn't as good as he's been all season, but he still ended up with 23 DraftKings points, but he only had 86 yards rushing. What was impressive about Sanders? He had 4 receptions for 49 yards. The 4 receptions was his season high. They're going into BYU. I like Sanders because he's the number 1 guy in the Arkansas backfield. Yes, KJ Jefferson takes some touches away, but Sanders is the key running back. So you're still looking at 20 to 25 carries or touches every week. I'll take that with Arkansas against the Cougars, 6,500. And then to me, hey, I want some of this Bobcats passing game. I don't know if people know. I don't know how it's pronounced. It might be Wiggles or Wiggles. I'm not sure. He used to play for Ohio State, Matt Wiggles. He moved to the Ohio Bobcats. He can't get on the field. It is very difficult at Ohio State. The young man transferred to Ohio Bobcats. He's a graduate student. In the last 2 games, 36 and 26 DraftKings points. He's only $5,000. I've got to take him, Matt. 13 receptions for 259 yards and 3 touchdowns. For $5,000, I'll take Rourke's number 1 guy. And that's my Fantastic 4 this week.
Fantastic. Let's get into our best bets. Starting here with our newest segment and our arguably favorite segment, we're going to go through our weekly prize picks. As a reminder, the Rookie Big Board is now paired up with Prize Picks. If you use the promo code RBB, when you make your first deposit, you get a 100% deposit match up to $100. So you drop $50 in there, they give you $50 of free play. That's what I did, John, over a month ago. And guess who is still working off of his free play? This guy right here. It is an absolute Saturday enhancer. And John, I can tell you that folks are using the promo code. I'm seeing that come in, so we appreciate that support. It helps out this show as well, which, as a reminder, comes to you very free and very consistently. Now, John, the way Prize Picks works, if you're not familiar with it, is you essentially are putting together a set of props, turning them into a parlay. If you hit on them, you can do anywhere from 3 to 5. And if you hit on them, you're going to get a nice cash out. We go through for your purposes and identify one quarterback, one running back, and one wide receiver prop that we personally are playing this week, and that should help you build a winning parlay. John, why don't you go ahead and start here with your quarterback prop this week?
Matt, I looked at all the quarterbacks, and then I realized DJU, he is smoking hot. But maybe the algorithm is looking at his season totals. And I know it's on the road against Florida State, who's better than I expected them to be. The Seminoles are playing good football, but we can get there on fantasy points, Matt. He scores touchdowns on the ground. This is his last 4 games rushing. 69, 73, 52, and 62. So let's say we have a floor of 4 points rushing, and then his passing yards are 220, 209, 371, and 221. He has smashed over 25 points in the last 4 games. I'll take DJU. I know maybe Prize Picks knows something I don't, but I love only 21.5 on the road against Florida State. He's hot. I'm a believer in DJU.
All right. I've got Spencer Sanders over 20.5 completions. Spencer Sanders has completed over 20 passes in 3 out of 5 games this year. The other game, he had 20, so he was just under this. And the other game was Arkansas Pine Bluff, where he completed 80% of his 16 passing attempts. They obviously didn't need him. They will need him this week, John, against TCU, who has been an explosive passing attack. Oklahoma State is going to have to keep up, and I think Spencer Sanders is going to smash past 20 completions. I'd be surprised if he wasn't north of 25 by the end of this game. I think that's a really nice prop here to serve as a foundation of your Prize Picks power play. John, let's go ahead and get into your running back pick this week.
You know, we are big fans of Nick Singleton, but Matt, I have to be objective when we are doing Prize Picks. My cash is more important than my fantasy love of Singleton. First, I looked up. If you look at the raw stats, he has surpassed 79 yards rushing 3 of 5 games. That's impressive. However, against Central Michigan and Purdue, he had under 42 yards rushing. Matt, Penn State's going into the big house. And I know the criticism is Michigan hasn't played anyone, and that is a fair criticism. But I believe that in the big house, in this game, you have a freshman running back, and they have a stable of players in the backfield. Sean Clifford can run the ball. I have a feeling he's not going to get enough touches here. I like the under on Singleton. I know you people want to go over, but I'm going to be smart. I'm going on the under. I think only way I think I can lose, Singleton hits that 60-yard home run against Michigan, but I'll bank that their safeties can drag him down from behind. I'm going on the under on Nick Singleton.
Yeah, John, we mentioned it last week. I feel like there's always one pick that Prize Picks like dangles out there to give you as a little bit of a gift. And I feel like Singleton under 79.5 is a gift. So I'm with you on that pick. I'm going to go Jaden Ott over 98.5 rushing yards. I mean, Jaden Ott has shown the ability to go over 100 yards. He's done it twice this season. And he's playing, John, Colorado. Absolute worst rushing defense in the country. That is not me exaggerating. They are actually the worst rushing defense in the country. Cal's going to get up. They're going to get up early. They're going to run the ball, and this talented freshman is going to blow past 100 yards. I feel like that is a smash play there at the running back position. John, you went Boutte last week, and you're going back to the well this week.
Yeah, Boutte was 9.5 fantasy points last week. This week, it was 10.5. Matt, he didn't smash it last week. He only had 15.3. But you know what, Matt? I don't care if he gets it over 1 point or 50 points. It still counts. He has gone over 10.5 twice out of 5 games. And he's been terrible, Matt. I mean, how bad has he played? He had 8 targets last week. That was his season high. In 2 of the last 3 games, he has had over 7 targets. Now, I'm very disappointed in his yards per reception. They're not getting him the ball. But you got to figure eventually Daniels is going to hit him for a big play. He's too talented. So he's against Florida here. If LSU wants to win in the swamp, they better get Boutte some targets. I love this over 10.5 points.
John, I've gone Charlie Jones the last 2 weeks. I decided it wouldn't be fun if I went Charlie Jones again, but I went to the next closest thing, and I went Xavier Hutchinson. Xavier Hutchinson over 8.5 receptions. Now, on the surface, over 8.5 receptions is a scary number. It's normally one I would avoid. But the lowest amount of receptions that Xavier Hutchinson has in a game this year is 8. And he's gone 8 3 times. And he's gone above 8 3 times. So you understand why the line is where it is. But Iowa State is going to be playing Texas. And this is Texas with healthy Quinn Ewers, which means Iowa State is likely playing from behind. I believe they're a 16-point underdog, if I'm remembering correctly. So I think they're going to need to throw the ball a lot. And that is going to work in the favor of Xavier Hutchinson. I wouldn't be shocked if he sees 13, 14 targets, and he's catching most of the balls that come his way. There you have it. Those are our prize picks of the week. And as a reminder, if you use the code RBB, you are getting a 100% deposit match. You put in $10, they put in $10, you put in $100, they put in $100. It is a great enhancer to any Saturday game day. And John, we will finish up as always with our best bets segment. John is over 500 for the season. He got to 11-10. I was shooting there. I got a little too close to the sun, a little too aggressive last week. So we're going to need a little bounce back for me. I'm trending at 8-13. We are inching closer to 500 as a team, 19-23. And I think we'll get there, John. We'll get there soon. And let's start here with your point spread pick of the week, Akron plus 13.5.
Matt, I'm a big believer in the group of 5 for best bets. I think a lot of people are afraid because they're not as familiar and they want to go with the name schools, but the value is in the group of 5. Last week, I took Ball State plus 7.5. They won. Not only did I cover, they won. This week, I know it might sound crazy. Central Michigan's 1-5, Matt. Akron is 1-5. But I am getting 13.5 points with the Zips. I mean, I'm sorry. You got 2 bad teams. Akron's actually okay offensively. I think this is screaming backdoor cover. And, you know, Matt, I love home underdogs. I'll take the Zips plus the 13.5 to cover here against Central Michigan.
All right. I'm going to take Clemson minus 3.5. I'm sorry. I don't understand. I don't understand. Yeah, I looked all around. This feels like an overvaluation of this Florida State team. Florida State hasn't necessarily won a big one. And over the last couple weeks, this Clemson team is not the same Clemson team from the beginning of the season. They destroyed Boston College. They beat NC State by 10. They had that double overtime victory against Wake Forest, which still cleared this 3.5 threshold. Florida State is coming off of a 2-point loss to NC State. NC State lost Devin Leary for the second half. They're coming off of a 10-point loss to Wake Forest. So they started 4-0 and they're trending down. I understand they're at home, but I think Clemson covers this, and I feel pretty confident about this pick. John, over under?
Man, I like your Clemson pick too, because I agree the Tigers are playing better football. The narrative was that they're not as good, and I think people want to believe that, but my eyes tell me and record tells me otherwise. So I like that one a lot. Matt, I thought I like to go in my mind on like over-unders before I look, and I knew Memphis ECU. I was thinking it'd be about 62.5, 63. I saw 58 on this. I feel like I'm getting 5-point window. This is the American Athletic Conference. I know Memphis is down. They are not the Memphis team that we are used to, but Seth Hennigan is still a viable quarterback. He's a good fantasy quarterback in the right matchups. ECU, Matt, they are bullies. When they get poor defenses, they just beat up on them in the passing game. The Pirates are home here. They might put up a 42 spot on their own, and Memphis will be forced to throw the ball and score 28. I like the over 58 on this. Teams can't run the ball, but they can still throw the ball. So maybe Vegas knows something I don't, but I'm taking the over, Memphis and ECU.
All right. I'm going to go over 43 for Syracuse, NC State. I understand why it's here. It's because Devin Leary's injury status is still uncertain for this week. But I think even if Devin Leary doesn't play, Syracuse has the ability to move the ball against a granted tough NC State defense. And I think NC State has the opportunity to expose Syracuse a little bit. Now, Syracuse against Virginia gave up 20 points. Against Purdue gave up 29 points. And I would say that this NC State offense is at least on par with Virginia, probably not quite at the level of Purdue, but they could certainly score in the 20s, which doesn't leave very much for Syracuse to have to score. So I think there's lots of opportunity here. to push past 43. I think this game ends up probably closer to 47, 48. And certainly if Devin Leary plays, it's probably in the 50s. So this is a line that if you're interested in, you're probably going to want to get sooner rather than later. John finishes up strong with a nice money line pick.
Man, I always like the juice. There's plus 210 for the Illini at home, who are a 6.5-point dog. I almost took them on the point spread because it's 6.5. The Illini are a home dog against Minnesota, and Minnesota's good at 4-1, but the Illini are 5-1. Brett Bielema is running the football with Chase Brown. Both teams want to run the ball down the throats of the opponent. I'm going to take the Illini here in the upset. And I know Tanner Morgan, they want to throw the ball, I believe, against the Illini. But if the Illini can control the clock, Chase Brown gets over his 115 yards rushing, I'm taking the juice. Give me Illinois plus 210.
Well, John, I got a little too into the juice last week. I think I went for a plus 400 pick, so I thought I'd dial it down, and I'll go for USC plus 135. I understand that Utah's home field advantage is special. I understand that traditionally USC has struggled to win at Utah, but I believe the last time they went into Utah, they did win, and this is a good USC team. Now, Caleb Williams has struggled a little bit the last 2 weeks, but Utah has struggled overall this season. We remember their loss to Florida and a 10-point loss to UCLA, and I'd say that game felt like more than a 10-point loss. And I'm not knocking UCLA. It's a great offense, but I think USC is on par with what UCLA can put out. Otherwise, we've seen Utah beat Oregon State, Arizona State, San Diego State, and Southern Utah. So when they've needed to perform this season, Utah's disappointed compared to preseason expectations. And this line feels like it's still lined up with preseason expectations, despite USC having overperformed so far this season. So that being said, I think it's a close one. I debated the spread on this because I believe USC is getting 3. So I do think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be within, 3 to 7 points, but I went with the money line because I needed that Clemson spread pick. So you could go spread, you could go money line. I like the Trojans here this week. John, just like I like the prospects of another lucrative, another exciting, another fun week of college fantasy football. We appreciate you making us a part of your week 7 preparation, and we look forward to enjoying a wild weekend of college football alongside you. Thanks for listening, everybody.